year in rock. Now, 1985 wasn't just a great year of music for music's sake. It was a year of growth and maturity when rock artists put the power of their music to a greater use to feed the starving of Africa and aid the ailing farmers of America. And of course, there were the new records, the mammoth tours. I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Hunter. If you've been watching MTV Music News in 1985, you know it's been an extraordinary year, one in which musicians influenced a whole lot more than just music.
Rock and roll had a powerful influence on every facet of our lives this year: national politics, world politics, global famine relief, not to mention the worlds of film, fashion, and television.
The news is being made in places like London, Philadelphia, New York, and Los Angeles, and touching people as far away as Ethiopia, China, and South Africa.
But let's kick it off.
Bryan Adams made his mark live in 1985, on the road for 10 months, and one of the year's most consistently successful tours. Phil Collins released a solo album, produced Eric Clapton, recorded with Marilyn Martin, and won a Grammy for Against All Odds. He also fit in a fabulous world tour with his Hot Tub Club.
Nowadays, I just do everything I'm asked to do if I can physically do it, because I'm just pleased to be asked.
Tina Turner burned up the road with a 6-month tour that went to 89 North American cities, and a rejuvenated Dire Straits earned money for something in 20 different countries.
Don't come around here no more.
As for Tom Petty, he packed up the Plantation and brought it with him on the Southern Accents tour.
I think it's the most relaxed I've felt about a tour in a long time. Of course, I haven't done a tour in a long time, you know.
While Petty hadn't been on the road for a long time, Wham had never been out at all. So this year, George and Andrew sandwiched their first 2 American tours around a trek to a far more exotic locale: China.
It was a privilege and it was fascinating, but it was quite arduous as well. 2 weeks of real kind of, you know, protocol, and we're not very good at that. So, but Andrew's quite good at it, actually. Andrew's very polite to people who don't understand a word he's saying.
U2 emerged this year as a world-class live act with their first big arena tour.
At a U2 concert, people know we're there because we want to be there, not because, you know, our agents or our managers have forced us there, because we want to be there, and that's a good feeling. And we know the audience are there because they want to be there. What has brought us both there is the music.
After Prince earned $30 million in 32 cities and raised a few eyebrows in the process, he retired from touring and tried to make us believe he's just a normal guy.
I don't really consider myself a superstar. I live in a small town and I always will.
Well, I was born in a small town.
As the year ended, another son of the great Midwest went out to take on the world.
My career is like, it turned out that in the beginning I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. Now at 33, I feel like I'm doing it, I don't know if it's for the right reason, but I'm doing it for myself.
Still in the midst of a world tour, Sting was rock's man of 1,000 faces in 1985. His solo album, The Dream of the Blue Turtles, went platinum, and its 4 videos were as varied and creative as its sound. 85 was Sting's year for the big screen, too, as he appeared in 3 major Hollywood movies: Dune, The Bride, and Plenty.
You think it's my fault?
Though Sting got good reviews, all 3 were disappointing at the box office.
You people are cruel.
He performed at Live Aid and joined Dire Straits on Money for Nothing. He sang Mac the Knife on the Kurt Weill tribute album and backed up Simon Le Bon in Arcadia. He even became a father for the 4th time. But this was the year that Sting put the Police aside. The new band he assembled for The Dream of the Blue Turtles made news everywhere they toured.
I recruited jazz musicians from New York. Not that I wanted to play jazz, not that I wanted them to play my kind of rock music. I was hoping that by taking them out of their environment and putting me outside of my own comfortable environment, we would end up with something that was different from both rock or jazz, something without a label.
For this guy Sting for him to choose us and to decide to, you know, to go out with us, I think was kind of, you know, courageous on his part.
And this is like one of the few bands I've known in recent years that was put together not because of physical makeup and not because of, you know, dance routines or, you know, those kind of talents, but solely for musicianship.
If I built this fortress.
The band's formation and growth became the subject of the year's most anticipated rockumentary, Bring on the Night.
Most bands don't have enough funds to make a film about their beginnings because they start in a garage and they borrow amplifiers and they save up for guitar strings and whatever, which is the case with me as well. But this band was formed with a lot of privilege, let's be honest.
If Sting plans this much activity for next year, so far he's kept it to himself.
1986 is a blank page as far as I'm concerned. And the first priority, I suppose, is to go home and write some music, reintroduce myself to my kids, and we'll see.
I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet have got no rhythm. Though it's easy to pretend. I know you're not a fool. You should have known better to cheat a friend. Waste the chance that I did.
I think the most important thing that has happened is that Live Aid has given musicians and music back its dignity.
And Motorhead, we're 86 and 85. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
This is Washington Square Park in New York's Greenwich Village, and if it looks familiar to you, it's because it's the setting for the powerful Sun City video. The Sun City is just one of a number of recent songs written and recorded with a single goal in mind: to end human suffering. The movement began back in 1984 with Band Aid, and it was followed up in 1985, first by USA for Africa.
USA for Africa brought together more superstars than any event in pop history. The American benefit for Ethiopian famine relief was put in motion by pop music manager Ken Cragen, who together with Lionel Richie and Quincy Jones assembled the star-studded choir.
I think one of the pivotal decisions was to schedule the recording session the night of the American Music Awards, because I knew that a lot of artists would be in town.
But when the big night arrived, the star turnout exceeded everyone's expectations.
When I saw those faces come in the studio that night after the American Music Awards, and they just were checking in one by one, Ray Charles and just on and on. They weren't involved in the egos, and that's one of the key words we had that night was check your ego at the door. And everybody did.
The recording session for We Are the World lasted 10 hours and created an emotional bond among the 46 performers.
Somewhere around 5 o'clock in the morning, we ceased being individuals. We were a family so strong, so committed to something that it was frightening. They didn't care about their egos. They didn't care really about how they were dressed. They were basically there that evening to save lives.
USA for Africa has gone on to sell a total of 6 million records and inspire spin-off benefits around the world. But without the work of one man, none of it would have been possible.
It's been a very good year in that I've done something I'll remember all my life, and it's made it worth my while to be alive when so many are dying.
Like a missionary on a year-long pilgrimage, Bob Geldof circled the globe. He alerted the world to the enormity of the African famine, which he learned about firsthand.
Bob Geldof has arrived in Ethiopia to see how the millions of pounds he's helped to raise for the famine victims could be used.
You actually see them dying as well in huge quantities. You sort of wonder, how is it possible that something like that goes on, and why do we let it?
Geldof's vision gave USA for Africa a boost, and his persistence and devotion made Live Aid a reality.
How did you get involved with Live Aid then?
Through Bob Geldof.
Bob Geldof called me.
Geldof rang me up.
Bob Geldof called me up and asked if I wanted to do it. So, of course, I said, yeah, I'd do it.
Live Aid had the whole world watching, and it lived up to the promise of a utopian global village.
I think people tend to forget that what I actually did was play in a band. And when I was out there just now, it was suddenly, one, people were made aware of, and two, I suddenly became aware of it myself. Because in my mind, I've just been focusing on getting there to this day, working it all out and making sure it worked. And then suddenly I forgot it all for those minutes I was on stage. And it all seemed very real to me, and it suddenly struck me, you know, just how exciting it must seem to other people. And it suddenly struck me, and I just said,
I just realised today is the best day in my life.
Following Live Aid, Bob was honored in the U.S. Congress, at the MTV Video Awards, on the floor of the UN, and in the papers for a Nobel Peace Prize nomination. After a year of charitable work, St. Bob says he just wants to go back to being a pop star. But can he, when he knows what it's going to take to feed the world?
Geldof used to say, said it for years, music can't change the world. You know, music really can't change anything. But look, it's changed him so much, and through him it's changed the world already. It's changed, it's made a world of difference to a lot of people's lives.
By now, you've probably heard all the statistics, but here they are one more time. On July 13th, 66 bands performed in front of a total audience of 1.5 billion people and raised $80 million to help fight the Ethiopian famine. But numbers aren't everything. The real story of Live Aid might be that if one person pushes hard enough, he can help change the world.
Bob phoned me up in January and said, would you do it? And I said, boy, if you can get it together, of course. Not thinking that he actually would. And that, for me, is the main achievement of the day, just actually getting this together.
Getting the artists together was a massive undertaking, but getting the concert televised live around the world was nothing short of a technological miracle. Thousands of technicians worked behind the scenes in the Philadelphia Broadcast Center to keep the concerts on the air in 150 countries, while over 1,000 journalists, photographers, and camera crews from around the world recorded the event that would become instant history.
In the middle of things, there seemed to be this weird awareness. I mean, I think Mick Brown in the Sunday Times put it best, one had the eerie feeling of cities at opposite ends of the earth waving at each other. And I think that was true. Like, I mean, it sounds terrible corny, you know, but it really was, in a tangible and physical way, the globe was linked. It was a very, very peculiar atmosphere, and I haven't experienced it before in my life, and I'm not sure we will again, but I would like to.
Live Aid was a who's who of all the best 1985 had to offer. But the concerts also reunited bands from the past, like Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and The Who hadn't played together since 1982.
Mr. Geldof made us an offer we couldn't refuse. I mean, you can't refuse a thing like that. Even with all our differences, it was worth doing.
This is what rock had been promising for 20 years. Power for the people. And strange, though, in the end, the bitter irony of it all is that, you know, the power turns out to be rock as the people's elected representatives.
During Live Aid, Phil Collins almost made time stand still. He played a set with Sting in London, then flew the Concorde to Philly for the Led Zeppelin reunion.
So when I got here, I quickly rushed in to say hello to Eric, find out what songs he was playing, rushed over to Jimmy and Robert to see what songs they were playing, and I got a quick 1, 2, 3, 4 through it, and I was told to lay off if I didn't know where I was, which I laid off quite a lot. No rehearsal at all.
It ain't time to think about it, really. We just said we'd do it. This is the right reason to do what we did.
Live Aid focused the eyes of the world on the rock and roll community, proving for both the artists and the audience that music can be more than just entertainment.
Suddenly, people want more out of rock and roll.
If we can't take time out to do this for this cause, then who can? I know for myself and for our band, it's the only altruistic thing we've ever done in our existence.
I know that Bob's been saying that there's no way this will happen again, but I really hope that something else could happen, more things could happen.
The seed for rock's next major benefit concert was planted right on stage.
I just like to say, I hope that some of the money that's raised for all the people in Africa, maybe they could just take a little bit of it, maybe 1 or 2 million maybe, and use it, say, to pay the mortgages on some of the farms that the farmers here owe to the banks.
Ain't on the scarecrow, but on the plow, this land for the nation, this land
Band Aid and Live Aid sort of guilted everybody into, you know, gee, what have we been doing for 10 or 12 years? Nothing. And suddenly you realize that it wasn't that much of an effort to just volunteer some time as long as the cause is worthy.
You got to hide it, hide. You got to jump and run again.
John Fogerty and 53 other artists found a worthy cause on September 22nd, attracting 80,000 fans and over 20 million TV viewers to Champaign, Illinois. Farm Aid was organized by Willie Nelson with help from Neil Young and John Cougar Mellencamp to call attention to the plight of America's embattled family farmers.
The family system in this country is threatened at its very core by what's happening. If the family farm dies, the small family business in rural towns dies, and it could possibly turn them into ghost towns.
Here's a song for all you mamas out there, keeping those families together. And all you farmers' wives, doing your best.
Unlike Live Aid, Farm Aid focused on issues close to home, and with rock and country stars getting together on a grand scale, the concert was a spirited celebration of American music.
This is big. Take a walk in the wild side.
It's really neat to see all those different kinds of talent together and all that different kind of audience together. You know, see them rubbing elbows out there, maybe for the first time.
I was standing by Willie on the stage, and Merle Haggard walked off, and Bon Jovi walked on, and they loved Merle and they loved Bon Jovi. So, you know, to me that was great.
Farm Aid contained its share of superstar duets. Bob Dylan was backed by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Neil Young got back to the country with Waylon Jennings. And Daryl Hall left the Big Bam Boom behind to play with Billy Joel and Bonnie Raitt.
Every time you go away, you take a piece of me with you.
The farmers' problems continue, but Farm Aid managed to raise $11 million and some awareness about a crisis in our own backyard.
We haven't been always able to do this, but thanks to television, thanks to things like We Are the World and Live Aid, now, for some reason, people are listening to what the musicians have to say.
The power of music blew the cover off apartheid in South Africa this year. Sun City took music one step beyond charity into politics and protest, as Steve Van Zandt brought together 53 artists to speak out against racism.
Sun City represents one of the fundamental aspects of apartheid, that relocation policy. Every time somebody plays Sun City, they're justifying that policy.
Calling for a world of racial harmony, Van Zandt created a world of musical harmony. Sun City's participants came from rock, salsa, rap, jazz, and soul across the spectrum of popular music. The sheer scope of Sun City and his potent political message confused and frightened radio programmers, and the record was slow to receive airplay. But despite that resistance, Artists United Against Apartheid have sold over 300,000 albums, and they've spoken in both the U.S. Congress and the United Nations. As 1985 drew to a close, artists were getting involved in another battle, this one against AIDS. In December, Cyndi Lauper hosted what appears to be the first of many Rock Against AIDS benefits. And Dionne Warwick and Elton John released That's What Friends Are For, a record whose proceeds are going to AIDS research.
That's what friends are
The one thing that kind of sticks in my mind as bad is this whole thing about, you know, putting stickers on records, which I think is just ridiculous. They might as well sticker every book.
The Apollo Theater. Man, I have always wanted to stand on this stage. This is the place in New York where all the great soul stars came to play. People like Sam Cooke and Otis Redding, Smokey Robinson and Diana Ross, James Brown and Michael Jackson played right here on this stage. And on May the 4th of this year, the Apollo reopened its doors for another historic concert.
The
The Apollo turned 50 this May with a gala concert that featured some dream performances. George Michael sang with Smokey Robinson, and Boy George joined Stevie Wonder on stage. Stars from the theater's historic past like Al Green, Martha Reeves, and Patti LaBelle came back, and rock and rollers like Nile Rodgers and Rod Stewart came to pay homage. It was right here at the Apollo that Eddie Kendrick and David Ruffin made their return to live performance. For Daryl Hall and John Oates, bringing the former Temptations back to the limelight was a fan's labor of love.
That was one of those culminations of a lot of things for us.
You know, when you play with, you know, sort of like your teenage idols, that's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
360's Guitar Heroes made some noise this year. The normally reclusive Eric Clapton was positively outgoing with a new album co-produced by Phil Collins and a 4-month tour. Jimmy Page went on tour with his new group, The Firm, his first extended trip to the U.S. since 1977. And Jeff Beck came back with Flash, a super session LP that had everyone excited but Beck himself.
I was on holiday for a while. No, I just needed the time to think about things. It just happened to be 5 years.
Hart pulled through 5 lean years and emerged on top with a post-Prince makeover and a Holly Night ballad. In a year when so many looked back to the 60s for inspiration, the Starship rebuilt their city in a more timeless but timely image.
We're all happy and proud to have been a part of Jefferson Starship, and basically it's still the same band. But we thought the Jefferson sort of had like a late 60s, 70s kind of connotation to it, and we thought the shorter streamlined name Starship would just be much better for us right now at this point in time.
ABC hadn't been away for long, but they came back strong with Be Near Me.
When we've nothing to say, we disappear for a while, you know, and we go away and we make a record that we're proud of, you know. So now we're back.
Put me in, Coach.
I'm ready to play. Most eagerly awaited return of the year had to be John Fogerty's. After 10 years of self-doubt and paralyzing legal trouble, he won the battle with that old man down the road. Fogerty came back with a #1 album and a stunning performance at Farm Aid, right on time for this year's American Roots Revival.
I love it. I'm loving all this, you know. I was away a long time. I'm making up for that now.
Why the solo album? Why not? Or is it saying in Spanish, ¿por qué no?
Mick without the Stones? We saw it happen in '85 when She's the Boss cracked Billboard's top 20 and inspired Running Out of Luck, a full-length movie we still haven't seen. Mick did give us 3 videos this year, set in Brazil, London, and an animated Wonderland. Don Henley and Glenn Frey have been making solo albums since the Eagles went down in '82, and they made it back to the top in '85 when Glenn emerged as the voice of Miami Vice with 2 hits from network television's hottest series.
It's the nature of the business, it's the smuggler's blues.
We walked out of Fort Knox in 1980 when we could have probably gone on and milked a dead cow for a long time, and I think it took a lot of courage and about 4 years for us to you know, start our solo careers.
Meanwhile, Henley's Boys of Summer sparked a platinum album and a brilliant video that ran away with 4 MTV Video Music Awards.
Live on Dave TV!
David Lee Roth unleashed Crazy from the Heat, his first solo EP, and capped his way from the California beach to video vaudeville. Hollywood beckoned, and now Dave is casting his own Crazy from the Heat movie.
We have all the union problems that all the big movies have, you know. I have all the problems with the talent on the set going, Dave, I can't do this scene. What's my motivation? You know, many times I stop and I ask myself the same question.
But what about Van Halen?
Life goes on without me.
Rumors of Roth's departure started right after the solo record came out. And by midsummer, sure enough, Dave was gone, replaced by Sammy Hagar.
This is the new Van Halen. This is the heavy-duty model. It weighs less, it's faster, and it handles even better.
Eddie and Sammy first played live together at Farm Aid. The new Van Halen finished the year in the recording studio, laying down tracks with Foreigner's Mick Jones and planning a tour for '86. Other major breakups occurred when the Go-Go's split, hot on the heels of Jane Wiedlin's solo album. And the once innovative Tubes called it quits after 15 years together.
Lyrics may be considered offensive by some audiences. This warning was added to this record as a direct result of pressure from the Parents Music Resource Center, a group of influential congressmen's wives. And here's another one. This album contains material which a truly free society would neither fear nor suppress. This warning was written by Frank Zappa, a leading opponent of the PMRC. Now, there aren't many issues that could bring Frank Zappa together with Dee Snider and John Denver to testify before a congressional committee, but the question of censorship did. On September 19th, the Senate Commerce Committee held a hearing to determine if rock and roll is hazardous to its listeners. The Parents Music Resource Center called for the hearing, claiming that kids need protection from what they deem the sexually explicit and violent lyrics of groups like Motley Crue, AC/DC, and Def Leppard.
We are asking the recording industry to voluntarily assist parents who are concerned by placing a warning label on music products inappropriate for younger children due to explicit sexual or violent lyrics.
The hearing itself was a media circus, its accusations of pornography and censorship reminiscent of the McCarthy hearings of the 1950s.
The cover features the crotch piece that lead singer Blackie Lawless wears on stage. In this picture, there is blood dripping down his stomach, hands, and off of the blade between his legs. The song that accompanies this photo is Animal, Like a Beast.
It is my job as a parent to monitor what my children see, hear, and read during their preteen years. The full responsibility for this falls on the shoulders of my wife and I because there is no one else capable of making these judgments for us.
I suggest that explicit lyrics and graphic videos are not so far removed from what is seen on television every day and night, whether it be in the soap operas or on the news. That we should point our finger at the recording industry while watching the general public at a nationally televised baseball game chant in unison, "The Blue Jays suck," is ludicrous.
Later, the PMRC and the record industry agreed on a voluntary rating system, but most artists are not happy about it.
It's a form of censorship. It's against the First Amendment.
I think you should be able to say and do whatever you want with music.
There are some things that are a little too outrageous for me as a parent, as a person, and I support some lively controversy which will lead to some, rational decisions and stuff.
We're back in the 50s somehow. You've got to be kidding. It's not, it's not possible. This is a joke. It's not a joke. These people are serious and they're a minority.
This will have a chilling effect on what musicians write and what they play, and also to some degree on what record companies will release, will sign, and retailers will stock.
I strongly object to anybody trying to tell me how to write songs, what to write about, and who to write it to. If you don't like the stuff, don't listen to it.
One type of music hit especially hard by the PMRC was heavy metal. Metal 85 began with a tragic note. On New Year's Eve, Def Leppard drummer Rick Allen lost his left arm in an auto accident near his home in Sheffield, England. He remains with the band, though, and they'll take a second drummer with them when they tour in '86. The absence of Def Leppard and Van Halen from the scene helped make Motley Crue the success story of heavy metal. Their Theater of Pain album went platinum on the strength of Smokin' in the Boys' Room and a 91-date tour. But lead singer Vince Neil will have to pay over $2 million damages for driving the car that killed Hanoi Rocks drummer Razzle and injured 2 others. The Scorpions headlined the biggest of the summer festivals, Oakland's Day on the Green. The band from Germany shared the bill with Rat, Y&T, Yngwie Malmsteen, and Metallica. AC/DC came back strong this year with Fly on the Wall, but the band's tour was marred by claims their Highway to Hell album inspired the Night Stalker murders in L.A. Heavy metal fared well on the pop charts this year. Rat and Twisted Sister went platinum, and the Scorpions and Iron Maiden successfully revived that vestige of the 70s, the double live album.
Videos took on a whole new look in '85, as most of the year's best clips featured state-of-the-art animation techniques. Steve Barron directed one of the most popular animated videos, Dire Straits' Money for Nothing.
Look at them yo-yos, that's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV.
Computer animation and that type of computer animation had never really been attempted. It was a machine that was used for flying logos about.
I always think that videos owe a lot to TV commercials, that they really are just the same kind of editing and building of a very, very fast story is used.
While music videos have often resembled TV commercials, this year TV commercials borrowed something from music videos, the video stars themselves.
Watch 'em!
Lionel Richie, the Fat Boys, Herbie Hancock, the Thompson Twins, and the Del Fuegos were among the artists going corporate this year, as were Lou Reed and Grace Jones, who shot ads for Honda scooters.
I really like their idea for the commercial, and I thought it would be great for me to be on TV with it. And I think their scooters are really fun.
I didn't think that it would hurt my career or my image or anything. Instead, it actually helped it.
And while we're talking about trends, the Rock and Wrestling Connection defied the critics by getting even hotter in '85.
You're a dragon, Piper, and you're gonna be slayed. I just hope it's in my hands with all of MTV watching.
MTV, music to vomit by.
Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper and Company appeared in videos this year, and by the fall, they even had an album in the stores. Where there's music, there's fashion. This year, the look went straight back to the 60s. In other words, from LA to London, from Prince to Madonna, Paisley ruled.
We really went backwards this year, but the 60s were so forward forever that even going backwards, it took us forwards.
Apparently, every other show on television is trying to copy us.
It was the clothes, the colors, the drugs, the style. But most of all, it was the stars. Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas rivaled many rock stars this year. Maybe that's why the real rock stars flocked to Flamingo Land to appear on Miami Vice.
I ain't John Wayne, I don't have an S on my chest, okay? I'm down with you cats if the play calls for it, but otherwise, I ain't into violence. I think certainly Miami Vice has been the one show that has really shown respect for rock and roll music and used it properly, and really they're miles beyond whatever else is happening on network television.
I've gotten several calls from different people that would like to do the show that are top artists. Yeah, they want to. Shall I mention names?
Stars who acted on the show include the Power Station, Gene Simmons, Miles Davis, and Phil Collins. With its hip choice of music and Jan Hammer's theme, Miami Vice is the first TV soundtrack to top the charts in over 25 years. It's also launched singing careers for Detectives Crockett and Tubbs. Thomas has already released his album, Living the Book of My Life, and Johnson has one on the way.
This seems to be the year of a lot of people getting together.
That's right, Billy. Like your favorite superheroes, big-name artists joined forces to battle their way to the top of the charts. David Bowie and Mick Jagger formed the year's most stellar alliance, recording Dancing in the Street especially for Live Aid.
We decided to do a song together before he went to split back to the States. We recorded 7 o'clock in the evening, finished around 11, went to the Docklands, started the video around 12 and ended up at 8 in the morning. We did the whole thing in one night. It was great.
Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart renewed their on-again, off-again relationship with People Get Ready, and Tina Turner bridged the generation gap when she heated up Bryan Adams' It's Only Love. Elton John made it big with a recording and performing partner this year, Wham's George Michael.
We met George on holiday last year. We were on holiday. He was doing the Make It Big album in the south of France. And as soon as we met Andrew and George, we felt they were very much like us when we were 21 years ago.
British pop met Detroit soul and gave birth to a modern woman's anthem in a year when women went far in music. Aretha also brought in Clarence Clements to play sax on Freeway of Love. Clarence in turn called up Jackson Browne to help out on You're a Friend of Mine. Chrissie Hynde's one recorded appearance in '85 was a duet with UB40's Allie Campbell.
I can't just, spread myself thin and just, sing with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes along. Allie Campbell, I think, is really, really a great singer. So, I was really glad to be able to do something with him. And, when Iggy Pop calls me up and asks me to sing something with him, I might consider it.
There was one guy who just couldn't say no in '85, Eurythmic Dave Stewart. As the year went by, he became the Renaissance man of rock, working on several major projects in a number of different roles.
Everything's in order, that's all.
Don't worry. Just be yourself tonight.
At the start of the year, he was virtually Tom Petty's sidekick, writing, producing, and performing with the Heartbreakers.
We just got along instantly, and I think it was at a good time where both of us felt like playing around the studio, and we wrote a couple of songs very quickly.
We wrote a song actually within the first half hour of meeting, Tom and I, and we were so delighted with the fun of doing this, because I hadn't done it for a while, written with somebody else apart from Annie, and Tom hadn't done it for a while, that we immediately ran off giggling back to his studio.
And then he wouldn't go away for 3-4 weeks, Came to my house and ate everything there. Drank most of California.
When Bob Dylan needed direction on his videos, he called Dave up.
I liked Sweet Dreams and the last video he did. But, it's important if you're going to work with somebody, it's important to work with somebody who's got an authority, some type of authority on the scene. And I just figured that he had that.
By year's end, Dave and Dylan were recording together in Eurythmic's London studio.
Put it this way, the first gig I ever did, I played 15 Dylan songs. And, I was about 14 or something. I probably know how to play nearly every song that's been recorded by him.
Other artists Dave produced include Daryl Hall and ex-Undertone Fergal Sharkey, but his #1 collaborator remains Annie Lennox, and fittingly, this year's Eurythmics album featured guest stars like Elvis Costello, Stevie Wonder, and Aretha Franklin.
With Eurythmics being so changeable, all the time, our personnel, I've got to know so many different musicians now that I know are really great performers and really enjoy doing different stuff.
The most important thing that happened this year, I had a baby. My wife had a baby. We had a baby.
Besides discovering that we could take our laundry in and have people do it for us at, maybe double the cost, which isn't so bad considering, I'd say probably our greatest accomplishment was just another year, and putting out another record.
I'm telling you, Mark, these videos that are spun off from movies owe their popularity to the films themselves.
There's no question, Alan, that it's the films that are benefiting by being associated with the videos.
No, I disagree. There's no way a bad movie can be helped by a good video.
But there's no way that a good video can be helped by a bad movie.
Mark, that doesn't make any sense.
Hey, I was a film major, bub.
Right. Let's watch the movie. Once again, Hollywood took much of his inspiration from rock and roll and vice versa. The soundtracks for box office hits Beverly Hills Cop, Back to the Future, The Breakfast Club, and St. Elmo's Fire all yielded top 5 songs. The latter two films showcased another Hollywood pop phenomenon, the so-called Brat Pack, including Judd Nelson, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, and Rob Lowe. Together, they brought ensemble filmmaking to a more mature young audience and proved that actors like to work together almost the same way bands do.
I think it's a fortunate circumstance to get to work with the same actor more than once, because you don't have to play the do you know me games.
Judd is like old sneakers for me. I mean, he's really comfortable.
I know everyone wants to hear the dirt, but we really did get along.
Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome boasted something a lot bigger than any soundtrack, the acting debut of Tina Turner.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome! I was so excited doing what I wanted to do. I mean, how I was dressed and driving a car that looked like that, being with all those guys, and working with Mel, I mean, opposing him. Come on, tell me if that's power or what.
Grace Jones showed her power as the villain in A View to a Kill, the explosive James Bond summer movie. Sometimes big names don't make big hits. Perfect wasn't at the box office.
I'm a reporter for Rolling Stone. I'm doing a story about the sports connection here.
Really?
Yeah.
Rolling Stone?
Yes.
Cyndi Lauper's one release of the year was the theme from Goonies. Crush Groove brought the rap of Run DMC and the Fat Boys to the big screen.
You have no right.
Phil Collins had a #1 hit from White Nights. And so did Lionel Richie.
Say you, say me.
Pee Wee Herman became a household name this year thanks to his first feature film, Pee Wee's Big Adventure. But he's not the only comedian with Hollywood on his mind.
It's called Emo's Big Adventure. And what it is, I go to all the movie theaters all across the country and steal copies of Pee Wee Herman's new film.
'85 was a big year for comedy albums, including the vinyl debut of one of the hottest young comedians around.
I learned how to play the harmonica, but the only way I can play it is to drive 100 miles an hour, put the harmonica in my hand, stick my hand out the window. I put a new engine in my car, but didn't take the other one out. Now I can go 500 miles an hour. The harmonica sounds amazing.
Another young comedian with a record on the way is Howie Mandel.
This for $4. Does anybody else have one of these? How much is yours? $2. I lied, $1.
I started incorporating the audience into my act when they started attending. When there was nobody there, I didn't use them as much.
Comedy's resurgence also benefited established artists like Cheech and Chong and Billy Crystal. And Eddie Murphy stayed one step ahead of the pack this year by recording his first straight music album.
Just because I'm a comedian doesn't mean every time I open my mouth, something funny has to come out. I'm a human being, too.
Some made it big with their first album. Others finally emerged after years of playing and touring. Either way, 1985 was a banner year for new bands. Amy Mann's voice carried Till Tuesday from the Boston bar scene to an MTV Video Award. The Anglo-American Katrina and the Waves put the sunshine back into the summer. And the Hooters woke up Philadelphia's sleeping music scene with their major label debut, Nervous Night.
A lot of people ask about the name, but it really was based on this instrument which we use. It sounds like this, you know.
Yeah, I've heard that at baseball games.
Yeah, you've heard that one.
If this year's new artists had widely varied sounds and images, they also had something in common: sex appeal. Paul Young did it with soul, Sade with sophistication, and Aha with a rotoscope. One new star had a big name before he even recorded.
I think I'm being taken seriously. It's just the comparisons that are being made, you know, which I don't mind at all. I'm very proud of, you know, my voice being similar or whatever.
And some new artists weren't even new. After releasing 8 albums, Simple Minds finally hit with Don't You and Alive and Kickin'. Wham! Scored no less than 3 #1 songs from their second album, Make It Big. And Tears for Fears found salvation through Primal Therapy on their second album and first U.S. tour.
Ultimate goals like to change the world, and then the realistic goals
To make a few good records.
to make a few good records.
2 of the other new bands were really just Duran Duran. It was a splintered year for Duran Duran as they released 2 albums under 2 different names. John and Andy Taylor made the first move, forming The Power Station with Robert Palmer and former Chic drummer Tony Thompson. Not to be outdone, Simon Le Bon and Nick Rhodes recruited Roger Taylor and recorded as Arcadia.
What brought about the solo projects in the first place with the band?
I think
they started it. It wasn't us at all.
I think that after sort of 5 years of living together out of each other's pockets 24 hours a day, you really need to take some sort of break from each other. So instead of sort of going 5 separate ways, we just sort of split in half.
The Power Stations approach mixed funk with heavy metal, and their album, released in March, went platinum. But on the eve of the band's U.S. tour, Robert Palmer backed out, and pinch hitter Michael DeBar became the luckiest man in rock and roll.
I got this call out of the blue from Wayne, who is the Power Stations representative, saying, "What are you doing this summer?" And I said, well, you know, I'll be working on my album and doing it. And he said, well, there's a group that needs a singer. And I said, well, what group is that? And he said, can't tell you. Yeah, right. So I said, well, call me when you can tell me. So he called me a couple of days later and he said, it's the Power Station. So I dropped the phone, picked it up, and said, yes, I'm available.
If Michael didn't work out, it was off. The tour was off, you know. So it was one of those kind of things where it's got to work. I remember it was like when I first got contact lenses. I said, I've got to wear however painful they are, it's got to work. Yeah. And thank God it did, and we're having a great laugh doing it.
Arcadia's approach was a little more artistic. They recorded and remixed all year long in Paris and New York, burning up nearly $1 million to fashion, so read The Rose, as Simon indulged himself in a new role, playing guitar.
I mean, obviously I'm not a professional guitarist, but I had to put some of me down playing guitar on this album. It's the only chance I'd ever get. Andy Taylor would never let me go anywhere near a guitar before.
When he wasn't experimenting musically, Simon was bragging about his sailing ability.
Us English are faster and quicker than any of you guys.
But he almost drowned when his boat capsized in a race off the coast of England. The Durans did get together once or twice in '85. First, they recorded A View to a Kill, their James Bond fantasy, which went to #1. Then they performed a barely rehearsed set at Live Aid. They were also set to headline Super Concert 1 in Anaheim, but it was canceled when the promoters check bounced. Through it all, Duran Duran proved they're a band to be reckoned with, if not amused by.
I love this guy. I wish he was my daddy. I'm not old enough.
Every day, every day, every day, every day I write the book. Every day, every day, every day I write the book. Every day, every day.
1985 is just sort of a year when we're really starting to get the kickstand up, you know, we're just starting to move. I think we're going to hit 4th gear in 1986.
1, 2, 3, 4!
Nothing less than a hero, Bruce Springsteen was one artist who stood above all the others in 1985, and no matter how big Bruce got, he could still relate to his fans, and they could still believe in him.
He makes great music, he makes New Jersey proud.
New Jersey takes a lot of slack, but we got Bruce Springsteen and nobody else does.
I've never really seen or been a part of anything quite that positive. Bruce's fans are really over the top, as they say.
Bruce played the biggest tour of the past year and a half, performing in huge stadiums as though they were intimate clubs, and grossing nearly $90 million in the process. The tour went to 17 countries, and while American policies were taking a beating abroad, Springsteen presented an alternative vision of America.
When you're in Europe and you see the American flag flying, man, it's a wonderful thing. And when you see people stand up, born in USA, you know, and you're in a foreign country, you say, wow, man, I'm in somewhere else. And these people are talking about, it does bring about a sense of nationalism that is really, really wonderful.
Of course, for some fans, he was just sexy.
What do I like about him? I love his bum. His bum!
They all like his bum, folks.
Do you love me?
Back home, Born in the USA passed the 10 million mark in sales, the 4th largest selling album in history. It rode the top 10 all year long, spinning off 7 hit singles and 5 videos.
This is your hometown.
But Bruce's influence went deeper than the charts. He made politics a high priority in '85, singing on Sun City and We Are the World, donating over $1 million to unions and food banks, and supporting workers and Vietnam veterans.
I don't feel paralyzed anymore because of Bruce Springsteen, and I really mean that.
All this, and he got married, too, on May 25th in a secret ceremony to actress-model Julianne Phillips. They honeymooned on tour. Certainly, 1985 will be remembered as the year Bruce Springsteen was finally elevated to legend status. but it was also one in which he repaid the faith of his millions of fans with his spirit, his generosity, and his great rock and roll.
This has been the greatest year of my life. And I want to thank you for making me feel like the luckiest man in the world.
Well, we're feeling pretty lucky ourselves. 1985, musically, was a great year, and 1986 looks like it's going to have a lot going on, too.
I'm looking forward to it. Of course, MTV is going to be there covering it all for you.
On behalf of all of us here at MTV, we'd like to wish you a very happy and healthy new year. I'm Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Hunter. Thanks for watching.